Can you imagine a single day, just one battle, fought in October of 1600 that would decide the fate of an entire nation for the next 2.5 centuries? Well, that's the story of Sekigahara, probably the single most important battle in all of Japanese feudal history. So that's how the official historians for the winning side saw it. A moment of pure destiny, where chaos was finally stamped out and a whole new era of peace was born. And honestly, when you look at what happened next, you got to admit, it's pretty hard to argue with the sheer scale of the outcome. I mean, think about it. This one battle ushered in an era of peace under the Tokugawa shogunate that would last for over 250 years. Let's be clear, the stakes on this day, they just couldn't have been any higher. So how did we even get here? To understand that, we have to go back to the death of Japan's great unifier, Toyotomi Hideyoshi. He left behind this huge, dangerous power vacuum, and his only heir was his 5-year-old son. The future of the entire nation was just hanging by a thread. And into this chaos stepped 2 men, and their rivalry was about to drag the entire country into a massive civil war. On one side, you've got Ishida Mitsunari, a brilliant administrator super loyal to the late Hideyoshi's son. But he was a civilian official in a world of warriors, and the powerful military generals, they basically saw him as this arrogant pencil pusher. And then you have Tokugawa Ieyasu, the most powerful, the wealthiest, and probably the most patient warlord in Japan, who saw this as his big chance to grab the whole thing. So you've got these 2 guys on a total collision course, and tensions just start ratcheting up. Every warlord, every daimyo across Japan had to make a choice. They had to pick a side in the fight that was going to decide the country's future. So Mitsunari pulls together what becomes the Western Army, this coalition of daimyo who were loyal to the Toyotomi clan. But right from the get-go, his leadership was a huge problem. A lot of powerful generals really resented him for his critical reports about how they'd fought during the recent invasions of Korea, which you can imagine created these deep cracks in the alliance before it even got off the ground. And Ieyasu? Oh, he was a master politician. He saw this and just brilliantly exploited all that bad blood. He formed the Eastern Army, and its core was made up of the so-called military faction. These were powerful Toyotomi generals who hated Mitsunari more than they feared Ieyasu. So while Mitsunari was all about demanding loyalty, Ieyasu was playing a different game. He was making promises, cutting political deals, and, just getting ready for a fight by buying up huge stockpiles of firearms. And so it all comes to a head. The morning of October 21st, 1600, the 2 armies finally meet on this narrow plain called Sekigahara. This was it, the battle for control of Japan. You have to picture the scene. The day kicks off in total confusion. There's this super thick fog blanketing the whole valley, and the advance guards of both armies literally just stumble into each other. Neither side could see the full scale of the enemy force they were up against. I mean, can you imagine the tension? It must have been off the charts. And just look at the numbers here, the sheer scale of this thing. The Western Army under Mitsunari had about 81,000 men. Ieyasu's Eastern Army had almost 89,000. I mean, these armies were so evenly matched, it's crazy. On a field soaked with rain and covered in fog, there was no way this was going to be an easy victory. This was basically a recipe for an absolute bloodbath. And when the fighting finally kicks off, man, it is ferocious. Ieyasu's elite shock troops, the famous Red Devils, they charge forward, but Mitsunari's forces just hold their ground. For hours, it's just this brutal, bloody stalemate. Nobody's getting anywhere. But, battles like this, the ones that decide the fate of nations, they almost always come down to a single moment. And at Sekigahara, that moment wasn't going to happen on the front lines. Nope, it was going to come from a hill overlooking the whole thing. So picture this. Thousands of men are fighting and dying down in the valley. The outcome is totally up in the air, and one man's decision is about to change the course of history. So who was this guy? Okay, so his name was Kobayakawa Hideaki. He was a commander in the Western Army, and he had over 15,000 troops. And here's the thing. His troops were in this absolutely critical position on Mount Matsuo, looking down on the battlefield. But, and this is the huge twist, he'd secretly been talking to Ieyasu and had already promised to switch sides. So a pretty powerful legend grew up around this exact moment. The story goes that, as the battle is raging, Kobayakawa is just sitting there.
He's hesitating. And Ieyasu gets so frustrated, he supposedly orders his gunners to fire up at Kobayakawa's position, not to kill them, but to send a very clear, very loud message. Hey, make your choice now.
I mean, it's a great story, right? But modern historians, yeah, they're not so sure. They point out that the guns probably couldn't even reach that far. The much more likely truth is that this was just some drama added to the story later on, and Kobayakawa's betrayal was a done deal before the battle even started.
So whether he was spooked by Ieyasu's guns or just sticking to the plan, Kobayakawa finally gave the order. His 15,000 fresh troops charged down that mountain, not into the Eastern Army, but right into the flank of their own side. The commander they hit, Otani Yoshisugu, was totally overwhelmed and committed suicide. And that just kicked off this incredible domino effect of betrayal. Other commanders saw this, switched sides too, and just like that, the entire Western Army's flank just fell apart.
So after hours and hours of this brutal stalemate, the end came with just shocking speed. Seriously, modern estimates figure that from the second Kobayakawa charged, the whole battle was over in maybe just 2 hours. That huge Western army, it just completely collapsed into a full-blown rout.
So, with the battle won, Ieyasu didn't waste any time. He moved fast to lock down his power. See, the victory at Sekigahara wasn't just about ending a war. It was about building a whole new government from the ground up. And the aftermath was just swift and brutal. I mean, within weeks, the main guys from the Western Army, including Ishida Mitsunari himself, they're captured and publicly executed in Kyoto. Then, just 3 years later, in 1603, the emperor makes it official. Tokugawa Ieyasu gets the title he'd been fighting for, shogun, the military ruler of all Japan. And believe me, Ieyasu was thorough. He literally redrew the entire power map of Japan. He took away the lands of 87 defeated warlords. And then he massively rewarded the guys who fought for him. Allies like Ikeda Teramaza saw their lands grow by like 5 times. This wasn't just about punishing his enemies. It was a total teardown and rebuild of the country's entire ruling class. And that's how the Battle of Sekigahara finally, definitively brought an end to the Sengoku Jidai, that chaotic, century-long warring states period. And in its place, it created this new, unified Japan under the, let's call it, firm rule of the Tokugawa shogunate, an era of stability that would define the country for generations. It's kind of wild to think about. It all really came down to one decision on one hillside on one single day. Really makes you wonder, right? What would the next 2.5 centuries of Japanese history have looked like if Kobayakawa had decided to charge down the other side of that mountain?